Well, that was a super interesting discussion. Um, I love hearing the creative process that different sorts of people go through, um, and I'm looking forward to that 1,000-yard stare.
My wallet isn't.
Well, this is the nice thing, about a lot of rule sets. I've got a whole shelf full of rule books, and for games that that you don't have this constant power creep. And this is relevant to historicals, and I wanted to have a quick discussion between 12 and 12:30 about Napoleonics and historical wargaming. Tied in quite well, but Brad will be joining us soon. Is that I don't need to keep buying loads and loads of miniatures. Everything that I have, is usable in any type of game. I'm not constantly waiting for the next release to come out, or the next faction book update or something like that. So hopefully.
And I agree. I think one of the only issue that there tends to be is the issue of scale. So whether systems can be scale agnostic, that can be really useful. There's so many scales and so many different makes. Like I know with Ed and these guys jumping into Napoleonics, I was like, yay, I can finally bring out my 20mm Napoleonics. And they're like, we're 28mm.
Yeah, right. So
Sorry.
Here we jump into the issue of scale, right?
Yeah.
Or when Toph and I were like, let's just use Team Yankee rules with 6mm armor. And we've ended up using 15mm armor anyway, but that's still a hopefully something we can do in the future. So
yeah. No, I was chatting with Mike Parker from Battlefield Accessories, and JP, you'd mentioned that some of his guys want to jump on, so I might just send a quick message here to Michael, just letting him know he can jump on at some stage. I'll send him that link. I totally forgot to do it earlier on. So Mike, if you're listening, Mike, I've sent you the link on Facebook in our personal chats there. Feel free.
Also, Mike, it wasn't me telling Viv not to send the invite. Just want to be clear about that.
There's two sides to this story, so I'm not, I'm choosing not to believe either of them. And then
I think
go on.
No, I was going to say I think it's an interesting observation, Viv, about scale in historical gaming, because so many rules, there's so many different rules and so many different scales.
Yeah.
It can be kind of hard for somebody to decide how they're going to get in. And that's partly why I think Warlord games have done a great job with bolt action.
Yeah.
And setting up and providing, just about everything you need to get into World War II. And yes, it's 28mm, the scale of kings. But it's, I like 28mm because I think it's a good scale to get into, but 15mm is equally great, especially when you're playing Napoleonics.
Yeah, I was just going to say from a historical perspective, and certainly those from the period where the color and the grandeur and the spectacle of it is are more prevalent. It's great to see those great big armies in those smaller scales. But for me, I sold off all my 15mm stuff. I think that 28mm, when you have those big battalions and that big table, like the stuff that you see from the Perry brothers, who, JP, you've been fortunate enough to actually spend some time with.
Dream. That is like a bucket list item right there. That's
you see their great big tables, these big units, 28mm figures. It just looks absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, it does, right? I think the hard thing is always how intimidating it can be for somebody to say, you play bolt action, you paint maybe 30, 40 models. You transition into Napoleonics, and those 30, 40 models now just become one unit in a division or a corps.
Yeah.
And, my collection's currently sitting at 280 models for the French and nearly 300 models for the Prussians. And that's based on the way we're playing. That's just a division. And, the majority of Napoleonic battles are armies of multiples of those. So I think the challenge with historicals has always been, somebody goes, how many models do I have to paint?
Yeah.
I've so many.
I'll just quickly interrupt I've let Brad into the
you let him in.
I did. No fanfare, no intro. Just click straight on the button.
You're muted at the
Brad,
moment.
you
Brad,
are muted at the moment. As soon as you join a Google Meets, you're muted, so you need to unmute yourself.
Sorted.
Thank you, thank you so much for
Hey.
popping in. You know, when I was thinking, I'd love to get Brad on the cast. You know, Brad, you always start your podcast with that catch line, and I was trying to remember what it was, and I was like, I need to go and have a look at one of his podcasts so I can write down, you know, that famous that chat line. So do you want to give it to us, Brad?
I would love to. It's funny. People joke that I should pre-record that. I'm 100 and something, almost 150 episodes in, and I've never recorded it. I've never even written it down. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Cast Dice, the podcast that explores the great big wild world of tabletop gaming that exists today. It's been said once or twice, mainly on this podcast, that we are in the middle of a gaming renaissance. There are just too many good games that we can spend our hobby time and our hobby dollars on, and it can lead to a serious case of not knowing what to play next. And that's the purpose of this podcast, to talk about the games that my friends and I enjoy playing, to talk about big industry events, and to talk to the people who create these games. And that is where I usually introduce the guest.
Yeah, well,
Jesus Christ! You've never written that down.
No.
I was thinking about this just the other night. I was at the studio. I was there quite late. I was, doing some work, and I was listening to Cast Us, and
I'm sorry, but thank you.
and that intro came on, and I was thinking, oh man, he hasn't pre-recorded this because it's always slightly different. The intonation is slightly different, and you know that it's slightly different. And like he says it every time. It's just roll straight off.
There's been one or two that have train wrecked in the years, usually with a big guest. It's always embarrassing when I screw up the intro to my own show.
Yeah, sure.
You did that with Rick Priestley once, didn't you? Like you were so excited about it.
Once or twice, yeah. Rick is a regular on the show, so at this point, I'm usually okay with Rick coming on, but without fail, my dog arcs up when Rick's on, and so Rick actually knows the name of my dog because my dog usually turns into a horse's ass the second Rick shows up. I don't know what it is. It's Murphy's Law. Jim Jack Russell loves Rick Priestley, but
There you go.
Well, it turns out Jim loves good models, so he's excited to hear from him.
That's right.
Brad, what's your opinion here on scale? We were talking just before you came on about Napoleonics and historical gaming. Obviously, everyone here on the stream today is painting 28mm stuff. There was a very brief touching on the smaller scale of historical games for the grandeur of full armies. Mark Newman here in the chat has said 54 Napoleonics is the best.
That's right.
You're a sadist.
Yeah.
You're an absolute masochist.
He said Viv can speak to that.
Go big, go home.
That's it, right?
He goes on to say 54mm, the scale of emperors. I have been to Mark's house and played Napoleonics in 54mm. But for you,
You
Brad,
get 3 on the table, or are you running like 6,000 miles wide on your table? How does that even work? I mean, it's awesome. Don't get me wrong.
it looked great.
Damn.
I think we were playing much more of a skirmish style game. Mark, you'll have to remind me. I can't remember. But what's your opinion, Brad? What are you gaming, and what scales do you enjoy?
Look, I'm a 28mm guy from way back. I mean, the first things I ever painted were Space Marines, the RTB-01 a million years ago. Before that, it was all cardboard because I basically learned to read as a child by playing games. So Car Wars, BattleTech, Marvel Superheroes, role-playing game, D&D, those are my wheelhouse. TSR was awesome. Steve Jackson games way back when, and FASA. But then that second that I opened that Rogue Trader rule book way back when, and Rick Priestley got his hook into me, speaking of Rick again, and I read what a bolter did, I never went back, or at least I didn't for something like 20 years. And so for me, 28's always been what's natural. But that said, there's a million variations of 28 these days. Yeah. Is it heroic? Is it 32? What is 28 mil? And Andrew Noakes, I know you've mentioned him several times, messaged me right before I came on to say, make sure you bring painted models, because I'm not actually painting today because my eyes are killing me. But and it occurred to me that I have a massive pile of models that are all 28mm. but they're all very different sizes.
Yeah.
So that
it is all over the shop, isn't it? Like you can get true scale 28 mil, and they're really fine. Like the Infinity ones originally were very, very slender compared to your chunky boys, your Imperial Guardsmen that you could, probably build a house on. That was so bloody solid.
Right? Yeah, man.
It is one of those things that's all over the shop. Even I've seen 32 mil figures referred to as 28 and 28 referred to as 32, and it's one of those challenges. Is there a genre that you prefer, Brad? Because listening to Cast Dice and following you on Facebook, it's just you and just knowing you from our community here in Melbourne, you are everywhere. On every Facebook group, Brad will pop up. Everything, all the World War II stuff, 40k stuff. I see you in the Era 1 groups and everywhere. Is there a genre you prefer?
I think Brad's genre is everything.
Yeah, exactly. It's called attention deficit disorder.
Say the tabletop, right? That's the definition.
Yeah, I was going to say. Look, I had Mike Hutchinson and Sean Sutter. Sorry, I knew I was going to say that wrong. Sean Sutter on the show last week. Mike is the writer of Gaslands and A Billion Suns. And of course, Sean is the author of Relic Blade and recently Sludge War, for those of you who like your sort of post-apocalyptic Napoleonics. Highly recommend. Check it out. And we were talking about indie gaming. And one of the things is once you stop playing one system and you sort of look at gaming in general, and I guess that's what the purpose of Cast Dice is, literally, it's to explore the world of gaming that exists today. There are just too many good games, just to repeat myself. And so I'm constantly drawn in a million different directions. Now, I am an adult with attention deficit disorder. I don't make a joke about that. I am. And that has really led me down a million different paths because it's really easy for me to get excited about something that looks cool. And there's a million things that look cool these days.
Yeah.
The second that you sort of look outside of your wheelhouse, there are just too many awesome things to do. So Cast Dice has been great for me. I was on a number of podcasts. I started podcasting about Warhammer Fantasy Battle. Then I went to Bolt Action for years and years and years. I still love both. But I wanted to do more generalist gaming because there were just too many good things.
Too many options.
But in doing so, I ended up playing everything, especially when Cast Dice went to a weekly format. I ended up looking for the next episode. And in doing so, I was looking for the next game. And I kind of leaned into that, that goldfish phenomenon of, a castle, in a way that now my week, I hit that, a castle every single week, which is terrible for my bank account. But, it was wonderful for seeing the world of gaming that exists today. There are just so many interesting communities and games out there that you can interact with. It really does open up the world creatively, and it's really led to me painting some awesome stuff. But there's a flip side to that coin, and I've actually gone the other way where I've started painting armies for games that don't exist.
Okay.
And now I'm kind of I'm looking for, what can I use this for?
Yeah, sure.
For example,
you're anticipating now. You've gone the full
exactly
180.
I just want to quickly interrupt, Brad. We'll come back to that in a second because Muddy Funster here says, "Oh my God, Brad, enhance the myth, the legend, gorgeous." He then goes on to say, he says, "FYI, when Brad is drunk, really drunk, he starts mumbling the intro to Cast Dice to himself." Western Tabletop says it's great to see Cast Dice on the show, and World Tweet goes on, 28 mil represent. My problem
love
is,
you guys.
I am one of those people that just absorbs games. My issue being, I don't get so much of a chance to play those games that I almost feel like the more I learn about a game, as soon as I pick up another game, everything just goes in this ear and pushes everything else I remember about the other game out the other side.
I hear you. When you go to sit down to play a lot of these games, like I've been doing recently, well, not recently, lockdown life, but in the last couple of years, when you go to play games, I went back to play Bolt Action at the beginning of the year, and I've been playing Bolt Action for years. It's my preferred game, and I love it. And yet, I was trying to bring in rules from Erewhon and from countless other games going, wait, what game am I playing? How does this work again? And the problem is there's just too many games up here.
Yeah.
And while that makes for great content when you're talking about, oh, cool, this is a great mechanic, when you actually then go to play the games that you do know how to play and that you love playing on the tabletop, oftentimes, there's confusion, which makes me sound like, a tool when I'm going to play a game, because I go to do something and I go, wait, how does this work in this game again?
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah, that's been my struggle. And I kind of, decided, I like playing all different sorts of games. And for me, the aspect of actually playing the game is just as more social as it is, than just playing the game. So
exactly.
I don't mind catching up with someone and saying, let's play this game, or let's figure out how to play this game, and let's just have some fun and enjoy that experience. But at the same time, I still want that feeling of like, I know this game, and if I apply some proper strategy and tactics, I'm going to do well and I might win it. But to do that, you need to know the game properly, right?
Yeah.
So I've kind of decided that the Middle Earth strategy battle game will be one of my core games. I do want to get back to playing some bolt action. I've got quite a lot of stuff for bolt action, including a gorgeous army that I bought from you.
The Sikhs, what a great army! It's
so beautiful. Sadly, it's never seen the table under my leadership. As something that I'd love to change. I've chosen this is going to be my preferred game, and then let me dip my toe into everything else, because how can you resist? There's just so many options out there, and the accessibility of independent games, I'll call them independent games. To us is huge right now. Exactly. There's so many people out there who are able to bring a product to market, and so many of us here in the fishbowl that don't remember the other side of the fishbowl go, oh look, there's something new there, I'll get that, and then turn around, oh, there's something new there, I'll get that. And, it still allows me to enjoy that experience whilst
a squirrel.
Whilst playing the game. That's my biggest problem.
No, absolutely, and sometimes you do need to make those hard choices of what am I actually going to play? And it's, as you say, it is a social contract to a degree as well. While you can find some of the coolest looking games in the world, if you have no one to play them with, that can make for a real lonely
experience,
gaming experience, right? So yeah, it helps to be part of a gaming club. I know you guys have Axes and Ales. I still need to get up there for that. But JP and I, of course, are members of the Great Hampton Club. Represent.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how much of a member I can be these days. I've barely been there in the last couple of years, but yeah.
Well, again, lockdown life. We went to play a couple times when it reopened, but because of lockdowns, we haven't been able to play all that much. But it's as long as you have a group of friends who are willing to try new things. I've got some great buddies who I love to push dice with. Lee Avery, Dave Monroe. They're guys who are usually up to trying anything.
Yeah.
Drew McLean, just having a great time and, messing around and playing games.
Yeah. It's very much about that social, interaction.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah. I see you doing quite a lot of stuff, with those guys on the old Facebooks pops up.
That's what we do. So I did mention it, and I was asked to. So I've been painting 28 millimeter, and I'm trying to get the camera to zoom properly. G.I. Joe.
I was going to ask you about that. I was going to ask you about that because it's all the time. It's not relentless, but it's just one of those projects that just seems to be continually chipped at and worked on, and new things coming in and. Is this what you were referring to before when you said you started painting armies for games that don't exist yet?
Yes, this is exactly what I'm talking about. I have been painting G.I. Joe and Cobra armies now for a couple of years, and I originally started to get them on the tabletop for bolt action, but it just sort of grew out of control, and now I have about 100 Cobra infantry painted, partially painted by my buddy Patch. Thanks, Patch. They're gorgeous, but I've painted a motor pool of something like, I think, up to 20 vehicles for it now. Wow. And then the G.I. Joe side has almost as many vehicles, but I've only painted 29 infantry models. So I'm hoping to paint a couple more and make it a fully playable army, whatever that means, because don't know what game I'm going to use it for.
Where is all this coming from? Because I've seen that you've been buying some 3D printed stuff, but are you scratch building some of this stuff? Is this a secret? Because I've seen and followed and seen the comments from other people. And there's a lot of people who are like, we fucking need this. This should be a thing.
Yeah, well, I agree.
Every time I look at it, I'm like, just get me all of them now. My childhood demands it. I want Roadblock. I want Snake Eyes. I want freaking everyone.
So that is a multi-part answer. Most of the vehicles come from Thingiverse. There's a gentleman there, Jabberwock, who has made almost every G.I. Joe toy that I've ever wanted. He has made a 3D print file for it. And I've actually gone through several 3D print companies just running through his run. And he's a wonderful guy. I've met him virtually met him a couple times, and he loves that I'm printing out his stuff and having a great time with it. So that's where I get the vehicles. The infantry, I either convert. There were some bits and pieces that came from limited runs of sort of boutique model ranges that don't exist anymore, where I get some of my heads and some of the weapons and some of the models. That said, Footsore Miniatures North America has a pulp range, and I'm trying to get it to focus, but they have this is one of their unpainted pulp models, but they have a full range of models that work for G.I. Joe. For example, that's Tunnel Rat. Again, I haven't painted him yet. He's on my to-do pile, but literally it's perfect.
That is. I was going to say that's Tunnel Rat to a T.
Footsore Miniatures, but don't be confused. There are two Footsores. They're the same company, but they're different distribution hubs. And the pulp models are by Tim out of the U.S. one. So you want Footsore North America pulp, and they do an awesome range. They do snow serpents. They do cobra eels, as an entire army's worths of. They do Cobra leadership in cold weather gear. They do a bunch of just generic Joes. I just got Spirit, Crazy Legs, Law and Order. That's the military policeman and his dog. Mutt and Junkyard, the other dog handler, and a whole lot of other awesome characters from the G.I. Joe range.
Leatherneck in there somewhere?
So I converted Leatherneck out of a bolt-action Marine model with a plastic M16. So
nice.
Yeah.
He was the very first one I got as a kid.
Oh, so good, right?
Yeah, except I kept twisting him around until the rubber band in his pelvis snapped. So he got a different rubber band put in, which gave him very stretchy legs. But unfortunately, they got turfed eventually. But it'd be so cool to have them in 28 mil. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's it, man. That's the dream. Having recreating my childhood collection, because I was a fanatic G.I. Joe collector as a kid. Just looking at the picture of what Viv's showing on his screen, yes, that's Pablo Escobar, but next to it, that is Snow Job, Snake Eyes, Outback, and Firefly.
I thought Pablo Escobar was Snow Job. Different snow? Okay,
different kind of snow. But yeah, and I've painted all those guys for my army. Again, Tim's done an awesome job of bringing those to life, and they're awesome. The Wild Bill's in there. There are just so many good models in that range that are almost perfect for G.I. Joe, if not literally perfect. So yeah, big fan. But yeah, then converting bolt action models and just working my way through is how I make the rest of that work.
It looks so good. It's such a fun project. Are you secretly, Brad, working on something for this?
Maybe. Look, I don't want to say I am because I have nothing that's shareable, but I have been kicking around ideas for a while. I was really excited about doing like a commando raid game, something on a very small scale, not 1,000-yard stare like what you guys were talking about, but more of like an infiltration team, like the beginning of the movie Predator or something like that, except, where I could reskin it with G.I. Joe models, given the stuff that I already had. But there is a new game coming out by, why am I suddenly blanking on his name? The gentleman who made Test of Honor.
Joey Maguire.
No, Test of Honor's the samurai game.
Oh, Test of Honor. Sorry.
Not This Is a Test. Although he makes great stuff too. But he's coming out with a game.
Is that the same guy who did Mortal Gods?
Yeah. Could be.
Seems like
that is the guy. So, Mortal Gods is by Footsore, and that's Andy Hobday.
Yeah,
but
I thought Test of Honor was the same system. Oh.
Graham Davey.
It's Andy was part of it originally, but then it moved off, and it went to a different company. But the new game that's coming out is 0200 Hours, which is going to be night raids in World War II. And so I saw that was coming and went, well, maybe I don't need to write this because I know that. Oh, I cannot believe I'm blanking on the gentleman's name. It's Graham, isn't it? Graham Davey. Sorry.
Yeah.
Graham Davey is such a great games designer that, whatever he does is going to be a million times better than what I do. So I kind of put that on hold. But yeah, look, I just want to play games with friends. And if someone else does it better, I'm happy with that too.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm not busy doing this.
Foggy in the chat here, Brad says he feels old. He says, I know most of those games that you mentioned. Car Wars was so fun.
Car Wars is such a fun game. Although if you go to play it now, like my memories of Car Wars are amazing. It is such like a chaotic, crazy game. It's brilliant. It is, if you play it now, it does feel a little car simulating. Like it's not as fun as I remember.
Gotta love those rose-colored lenses, eh?
Yeah, it's amazing like that when you think back from something that you really enjoyed as a kid, and you're like, I want that feeling again. So you go back and you look at it, and you're like, it feels different now. It's not the same.
I went back and played the original Red Alert when they remastered it. I was like, this is so good. And then within 5 minutes, I'm screaming at the pathing of the units and wondering why I can't right-click on anything and deselecting stuff. And what a nightmare.
Oh yeah. Well, Dave Monroe and I pulled it out, and we were having a good go at it. We pulled out one of the old arena boards and had some cars, and we're having fun. And he lit my car on fire, and we realized the only way that my guy could survive, because I didn't have a fire extinguisher, was for me to drive full speed into a wall and then dive out. He then drove over me, and that was the end of the game. And it was awesome fun. But it took us forever to figure it out because it had, it was one of those games that was around for so long that it did have a little bloat at the end and a million different books. And look, you could do anything with it. But yeah, if you compare that to, for example, playing Gaslands is a far more streamlined experience, but it depends on the granularity you want in your game system, I suppose.
Yeah.
So as for someone who doesn't have enough memory up here to remember all the Car Wars rules, I prefer Gaslands these days. That said, I love Car Wars. In fact, my camera is sitting on 2 Car Wars boxes as we speak.
Amazing. That's amazing. Christian Halverson in the chat says he's painting 25mm naps as we speak.
Nice.
He says 25mm minifigs for 1 hour war games is a nostalgic project.
That's right.
That's excellent.
And hey, if you want to paint 25mm and not have it be 25mm, if you paint giant robots, turns out giant robots are 25mm and 10mm. So yeah.
Perfect. Right. Your glass, Brad, I know that many people have mentioned and asked you how you do your glass, but the glass on all your vehicles, I love how it's the same on all of them. It's the same effect. It's, it has a consistent look and feel, and it really ties everything together well. I'm one of those, man. I'm one of those people who are like, I'm going to fucking try this new technique and I'm going to do this. And so all of my vehicles look slightly different because I can't stop myself from saying, yeah, that looks good. Just do it on the next one. And they all look good. So whenever I've seen a shot of all your vehicles together, they look cohesive and it's nice to look at because, the glass is, that technique that you use is always the same.
Thanks, man. It's, I'm a creature of habit, as many people have said. I'm an old man who just needs to not always do the same thing. But once I find something I like, I end up doing it. Well, can't get this camera to focus properly, but Optimus Prime is.
This ties a little bit into Scott Beale's comment here. He says, I'm typically a fantasy sci-fi gamer, and I'm so excited about the silver bayonet from Osprey.
Right? Mine's coming in the mail. So cool.
He says, Gothic horror combined with Napoleonic sounds awesome.
Yeah.
That does sound very cool.
And, speaking of, you can't stop doing new things. Have you heard about the game? Obviously you have. I haven't heard about it. Jail Edwards goes on to say, Silver Bayonet looks cool. I have enough painted Napoleonics that I just need some monsters.
Yes.
And then Jordan.
JL, it doesn't take much to paint up some monsters, brother. It's by the author of Frostgrave and Stargrave and Ghosts Archipelago and Rangers of Shadow Deep, Joseph McCullough. It looks really cool. I had him on the show to talk about Stargrave a little while ago, and I tried to pry some information about that, but he's very disciplined in talking about what's coming out next. So I'm hoping to have him on the show to talk about that at some point.
Oh, that'd be amazing. Brad, talking about your show and all these guests, what made you decide to start podcasting about stuff?
So I was part of a group of guys out of the Hampton Game Club, that went and started a fantasy podcast called The Dwellers Below. I was very quickly the worst dweller because I didn't play enough fantasy and I was terrible at the game compared to everyone else. But I loved talking about games because it's something that I used to do. I was a radio DJ for a long time, and then I worked for Games Workshop in sales, so I talked about games all day. And so for me, talking about gaming and gaming have always been sort of hand in hand as sort of hobbies in and of themselves.
Yeah.
And so to then move on, and I got really into bolt action, it being what I originally thought was being more of a Rick Priestley rule set. Yes, obviously, Alessio wrote it with Rick, but that's what got me into it in the first place. And then loving bolt action, did a series of bolt action podcasts, and then just wanted to keep talking about gaming in general. And because I've spent a lot of time in gaming in a lot of different places, I know a lot of people in a lot of, strange nooks and crannies in the industry. And that's led to me being able to talk to some really exciting people.
Yeah, because you have all these wonderful guests in your show. And, it's one of those things that makes Cast Ice really interesting to listen to because, not only are you very easy to listen to, but you seem to get all these.
I don't know about that.
I don't know.
I edit myself. I don't think I'm easy to listen to at all. For the record, I hate listening to myself.
I think
no one likes listening to themselves, though. That's.
I think most people do. But you get all these amazing guests on the show, and is that just a process of you reaching out to them, or you mentioned that a lot of these people in the nooks and crannies and stuff.
Yeah, Henry Rollins says it best. I'm not a talented man, but I'm a hardworking man, and I never stop. And that's sort of the philosophy that I approach Cast Dice with. I'm just a guy who likes to talk, and so I'm sort of relentless about who I approach. I'm constantly writing emails and Facebook Messenger messages to authors, to companies, and companies are often usually pretty happy that I don't want free stuff because that's not what I'm asking for.
Yeah.
I'm usually just asking for an hour of somebody's time, and because I've talked to enough people, they say, well, who have you talked to in the past? And I can drop a bunch of names.
Yeah.
And then he's serious about it. And so I've been pretty lucky along the line. The other thing is a lot of, God, I need to stop tooting my own horn here, but a lot of gaming podcasts don't tend to be positive. They tend to, people love to bitch on the internet. It's a thing.
It is.
But yeah, right. But I think there's enough negativity. And so one of the things that I really try to bring to the show is just talking about stuff that I'm excited about and things that that I think are cool. And if I don't talk about it, it's because I'm not excited about it. And if I'm not excited about it, it's not going to be on the show.
Yeah.
But because I have that positivity to it, I'm often accused of being a shill for the industry, or a random fanboy.
How dare you be happy all the time?
I know, right?
Brutal. Well, it's interesting that you say that, because Western Tabletop here in the chat says, thank you, Brad, for bringing attention to independent rule sets. We're so grateful you reached out and got some exposure on the Vietnam Bolt Action rule set VC on the trail.
That's right. It's awesome.
But it's
so good.
It's a
I
really
just got
good
my
point,
Marines
though.
painted, by the way. Ready to rock and roll, man. Credence, bring it. Sorry.
This is another thing that I love, not just about your podcast, but so many podcasts, and it's kind of like a double-edged sword, is that you get introduced to so many new things, and new games and new experiences that, all of a sudden, now there's, another shelf of books and, another thing that I need to learn. And, it's a wonderful time, but, it's scary. It's, painful at the same time.
I literally finished, because we just moved house again. I just finished unpacking my office last night after a week. And yes, I am painfully aware of every single book that is on that shelf. And by shelf, I mean 3 shelves. And there's a lot.
Well, Foggy here in the chat, I was talking before about just having, core game and playing all the others.
Yeah.
He says it's probably smart to only go all in on one game and maybe small war bands or skirmish teams for other games. It's so easy to fall in love with games and the people playing them. And, that's comes again back to, my love of skirmish games is that you get a different experience, a different emotion, a different adventure for the different types of games that you're playing.
Exactly. And there's different mechanics that appeal to different people, and the communities for each one are slightly different. But yeah, there's just so many exciting, creative games and gaming communities and environments that you can become a part of. And the way you interact with one can actually change the way you think about another. And it just opens up opportunities for gaming. I mean, I know that several people in the chat, like JL, is a hell of a general. I know that from having played him. And I know that because he's played a ton of different games. And I know that he brings some of those tactics from one game system to another.
Yeah. Dave Taylor in the chat says, hey, Brad, great to see your face. And then Muddy jumps in and says, oi, I'm Brad's only fanboy. Get out.
Dave, I have to give a big shout out to Dave. I know I've said it before, but I'll say it again. Dave and I are sort of the worst exchange program in history. Dave Taylor, of course, used to be the former White Dwarf editor in Australia and is just like hobby god. And he came to the US. We overlapped for a year where we were roommates. And then there you go. Armies, legions, and hordes.
Massive fanboy right here. I love your work, Dave.
Dave's the best.
He's the reason, besides JP, that I'm doing Napoleonics, because of his British in this. So,
right?
Yeah.
I'm just going to drop Mike Parker into the meeting. Sorry, go on, Brad.
Hey, Mike.
Hi, Mark.
Hey, Mike.
But yeah, Dave came. I went down to Australia, and Dave stayed up in the US, and we've sort of traded off ever since. And
It's a fair exchange, though, right?
Oh, the US got the much better deal. Sorry.
What are you talking about? He paints too much for the rest of us. He's got a bigger audience over there. It's fine.
Oh man, you should watch him paint in person. That man is a
machine.
It's like it's biblical when he paints models. I have never, and I've lived with a lot of really talented painters, and I've hung out with a lot of really very prolific and fast painters. Dave puts them to shame, man. It's like a tornado goes from one end of the bench to the other, and then there's an army. It's unbelievable.
Valkur in the chat says, we were talking about podcasts and, introducing you to different sorts of things. He says, yes, oh my God, couldn't agree more about the negativity of gaming podcasts.
Right?
Some of them are just, they just, I think it's just a type of, I think it's a type of social thing that happens between gaming groups where that negativity and toxicity can become, just part of the everyday, vernacular of talking about certain games.
That's right.
I certainly don't. There's some games out there that I don't enjoy. There's some companies out there that aren't my favorite companies. But I got off that ragging on companies.
That Knights of Dice company, they're out of control.
Oh, those guys. Shit.
Yeah.
They should. How's their warehouse not burnt down already?
I have so many of your kits behind me that I haven't touched after that spending spree last year. But anyway,
it's too easy to come across that type of stuff, and
it is.
And Joshua goes on, and this is the difference with cast dice. He says, "I remember Brad from a fantasy tournament I played back in the day. Such a legend and a great positive voice in the gaming world."
Thank you.
and this is again, one of the things that I love about cast dice is just there's just so much positivity. There's so much excitement that happens. It's obviously a massive passion and something that you really enjoy doing.
Well, actually, one of the reasons I stopped listening to podcasts was because of that negativity on a lot of them. Became a bit difficult, especially in the last 2 years lockdown life, right?
Amen.
So,
oh man, it's hard. It's hard keeping up that positivity during this. I mean, we're the most locked down place on the planet, and don't get me wrong.
As of yesterday,
woohoo! Go us.
Records, yes.
Yeah, and look, I think it's probably for the best. Look at what's going on in the U.S. and different places. I don't want to get political, but look, I'm happy to be here. I'm glad I'm in Melbourne, but it takes its toll, man, and it's hard. And if you're here, man, you guys know it. The burn is real.
Yeah, it's been really, really difficult. And it's I've heard you do a couple of casts. Has that helped in any way to be able to stay connected with people or?
So yes. Look, when you asked me to come on, I was incredibly honored. First of all, but I think it was also one of those things that I've always struggled with positive mental health in general. And I guess that's something that I don't talk about on the show. But it's a side effect of being an adult with attention deficit disorder. I'm very, I jump from one thing to another, but it also leads to profound insecurities and anxiety, something my sister and I both suffer with.
Yeah.
But Cast Dice has been wonderful throughout this process because it forces me once a week to, even when I'm miserable, even when it's not working, even when I hate everything, I have to force myself to put the old DJ voice on, right? And I'm glad that I don't do video all the time. I can just do I look like hell.
You can sit there looking like a miserable bastard, and it doesn't actually matter.
Exactly. I got a face for radio. But being forced to get on to talk about something that I am passionate about, that's something that I love, is just such a boost. And there's been some podcasts that I've started listening to, not necessarily because, like, one of my favorite podcasts is the Full Force podcast, which is a G.I. Joe collecting podcast. Now, go figure the collection. Obviously, there's crossover there. Sure. But they often talk about collecting. I haven't bought a G.I. Joe anything official other than comic books and like collecting guides since the 80s.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, oh, okay, cool. But it's the positivity of the show that keeps me coming back every week. And that's what's driving me.
Yeah.
So, being forced to do what I do, I took a break last year when we moved house the last time, and I took a break, I think, for 5 weeks. And at the end, I was done. I just couldn't function as a human being anymore. And I didn't realize how much the show worked for me just to force me to, I guess I'm a perpetual motion machine. The second I stop, I die.
Yeah. So
just keep going.
And that can be one of the biggest challenges. I certainly know for me, with my struggles with anxiety and depression. I know on the inside that I have terrible anxiety. On the outside, I don't think I have terrible anxiety.
Right.
My wife suffers really badly. She's medicated for her anxiety. And, something was happening the other night, and I was sitting out there, and I just kept on gasping for breath. And my wife was like, "What's wrong?" And, I had a bit of a chat. She's like, your anxiety is really, really bad. And I think one of the things that, is really easy to lose hold of is, doing the things that you enjoy, or doing things that, give you that boost that you were just talking about.
Exactly.
And so whilst it must be really hard to, get through each week and then go, fuck, now I've got to do, cast dice. When you're in the middle of it and out the back of it, you're like, that was fucking great.
Exactly. Right.
If you can push yourself up to that point and then just jump in the water, all of a sudden it's not as cold as you think it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And part of that is to invite people on that I want to talk to. So it's talking to people who are equally passionate about things, and that passion is contagious.
Yeah, well, Dave Taylor says here it's got to be a conscious decision to be positive, and all the rest will follow. And that conscious decision is to say, I know I love that activity, I'm going to do it, and once I'm in it, there we go. The positivity is happening.
Exactly. And Dave's another exemplar of that. That is a man who you rarely hear say anything that isn't 100% positive about something that he's involved with. So.
Akhtar says, best game of bold action I've played in Melbourne was versus Brad's Chinese against my Norwegians.
I was going to say the most historical matchup ever. Chinese and Norwegian World War II.
Cam Davidson says, hey, Brad, what's a battle?
Oh, God, now we're going back. So fun story about that. Arcanicon is Australia's largest 40K tournament. And back in the day when I was a fairly competitive player, I used to go to all the big Melbourne events / interstate ones, but they always ask between each round, do you have any questions? And I don't know where I got it. I think I got it from Lee Tressiter, but I asked, what's a battle? And I did it enough that I became totally obnoxious about it, and then I just never stopped. But at ARC, they actually started pinging me points every time I asked it. So
hang on, didn't you do that?
Joke's on them. I still won that last time, too.
I was at a couple of ARCs back, and they were doing a briefing, and literally any questions, and out of the back of the room comes, what's a battle? And there's this collective groan across about 140 players.
Success.
Well done,
That's
mate.
how we do it.
Western Tabletop says car stuff definitely has been leading the way with good vibes in wargaming. And it is. It's really enjoyable. I really enjoyed the episode. I commented a couple of weeks back when you had the man from Battlefront on.
John Matthews, my old boss.
Yeah. And it was, an interesting topic and something that doesn't normally come up very often. And that's the logistics of getting us our toy soldiers.
That's it.
It was a wonderful episode, that one.
Look, I actually stole that idea whole hog from No Dice, No Glory. They actually had John on to talk about a bunch of things, but he mentioned logistics as part of that. Now, I worked for John directly for 2.5 years. In fact, John, when I left Games Workshop the first time, John was my referee when I went for my first ever working with children job. And they said that his reference was glowing, and they hired me because of my reference with him.
Amazing.
And a few months later, he called me at work to say, I'm going to call you back in 20 minutes. And I want you to make a list of every reason why you shouldn't come back to work for me. And I'm going to tell you why you're wrong. And then he hung up. And 20 minutes later, he called, and I gave him a list of reasons why I didn't want to go work for him again. And true to his word, he knocked him down one by one. That man can sell snow to an Eskimo. And within a week of that phone call, I was back sitting at my desk at Games Workshop working for him.
Amazing.
So, yeah. Yeah, John and I have a long sordid history. I have snuck cinnamon into more of his breakfast foods than I think anyone ever has. By the way, he hates cinnamon. So, yeah.
Muddy Funster
I figured it wasn't a favor.
Muddy Funster says, "Sure question. What are we donating to? How do I chuck some money in?" So if you're just tuning in, Painting for Life, obviously we're sitting down painting some miniatures, having a chat with between ourselves and people that we know in the tabletop industry, while we're supporting our Painting for Life campaign for Beyond Blue. They're an organisation that raises.
Spamming it in the chat as well.
There should be
There
should be a chat bot that should be spamming stuff out, but it's not working. For those that don't know, I accidentally deleted my stream setup at 10:30 last night and had to rebuild it. And so all my chat bots and stuff, I haven't been tested. All the testing I did during the week is gone. But we are, you can donate. There's a link in the description of this video to our fundraising campaign for Beyond Blue, which is currently sitting at. Let's go in.
We broke the 6K mark, mate.
No, we didn't. $6,044. That is unbelievable. We started with a $1,000 goal.
We beat it within 2 days.
Yeah, and we smashed that, I think, overnight. it's just amazing to see how much people are getting involved. It's wonderful. Shane Powell. Oh, at least one of my bots is working up. Popped a subscriber notification. I wish the spam bots would be doing their job to promote all the wonderful supporters.
Instead of just rubbing your ego, Viv. Yeah.
MJNL says, shout out to the Hobby Homies for positivity too and talking about mental health in our community. So the Hobby Homies podcast, they've sponsored the campaign as well. They've given us some brushes to give away. Yeah, definitely. I think the more of that we can have out there, the better. It comes up all the time on social media. We're more connected now than we've ever been in history. And if you're a member of multiple different groups like I am, and Brad, I'm sure you are, I'm sure we all are, our interests are all over the place. That not a day goes past where something will come up in my feed where I'm just like, fuck, not this again.
Yes.
And right? Because generally the first thing that gets posted on those is fucking Michael Jackson with his popcorn, right? And then here we go. It's going to be one of those discussions. It's just too much of it. It happens all too easily.
It really is, right? And it's they're and some people love to lean into it. Look, I'm not saying that anyone in the chat in particular, but I know there's at least one in there, Muddy, who loves to troll. But look, trolling.
There's a time and a place, right? There's a time and a place for it.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with having a little dig or having some fun, but unfortunately, the medium of social media and only having text-based conversations doesn't convey the sarcasm well enough.
I certainly think that can come across. And like we said at the beginning of the show, the Australian sense of humour, for those people who are watching, you need to be aware that, we will slam on our friends and insult them and rag on them. But, it's from a position of respect and love and, mutual sort of, understanding. That there is certainly sometimes a message that gets lost in translation on a text-based medium like, social media and Twitter and Facebook. But then there are just also those people that are just, it's
just dicks.
It's blatantly obvious that the hatred is there.
The opinions of Edward Jones are not represented by Knights of Christ or its affiliate organisations. I just might need to get
or anybody else in the chat.
Or anybody else on this thread. Yeah.
Adam Jones in the chat says, Brad, in the grim dark future, there is only what's a battle.
Adam, I miss your face. We should talk. Adam was one of my first friends when I moved to Australia. He was the very first person when I messaged on an Australian Wargame forum to say, hey, I'm about to move here. What should I bring? He was the first person to reply, and I've always appreciated that. Thank you, man.
Boggy says it's great to be around positivity and positive people to relieve that depression and anxiety, where negative media will only bury you more. All the negative play groups will discourage you going back. Yeah, it's you need to surround yourself by it. If you can put yourself in that positive environment, then you get that back. And whilst we're so isolated and separated from each other at the moment, I've found Cast Ice and other sort of podcasts and YouTube channels to be that positive environment for me. I can't get to the club. I can't play games with other people. I can't surround myself, physically by, the things that I enjoy and that give me, positive vibes. So, by reaching out to people online and hanging out with Ed and painting and, it's been a wonderful outlet for helping to, let that positivity and, drive to just, we can do this, come out.
Absolutely, man. And it's, support for one another too. I'm part of a group of guys who I used to podcast with and don't tend to much anymore, mainly because they have families. But we call it, it's been called a bunch of different things over the years, but it's just a chat of people, of guys talking, and it could be girls. It doesn't, gender's not part of it. It's just folks talking about their lives, sharing when they're having a hard day, painting and saying that looks great. I know that when I'm having a tough day or when I'm having a great day, there's a group of friends that I have that I can share that with. And, we're spread across the globe. And so I know that even when I'm wake up in the middle of the night and can't sleep because I'm worried about something, I post on there. And the very first thing they all do is, Brad, go to sleep. And then, all right, let's talk about this. And, having a group of friends that, are there, it's so important.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wonderful. Albert says now that he is live, we should pressure Brad to organise another bolt action tournament once we reach the 80% vaccination.
Look, man, we were supposed to. Lee Avery and I were planning to run another couple of events, and hashtag lockdown.
It's been so frustrating. You know, I said to my wife towards the end of last year, I was like, I'm really, after we'd gone through that big lockdown, and I said to my wife, I'm really excited. I want to start getting involved in more tournaments and going to more events. And she was like, you really should. It's that's my social group, hanging out with other gamers and other nerds, and she said you should, and I was like, I'm going to, and I went to an MESBG event, that was great fun, had a blast. That was run by Kylie Nova, super fun, really super chill, great event, and then down we come, and I was like, oh man, you just get crushed. You just get crushed again. And I'm like, oh, fuck, what am I supposed to do now? So, I really am looking forward. Yeah, exactly. I really am looking forward to being able to get involved in some of that sort of stuff. And I haven't been actually one of the last bolt action events that I went to, Brad, was one that you ran, in the city. Look at this.
That's right. Sadly, that venue doesn't exist anymore, and that's one of the big things that I think is going to be a casualty of COVID in Melbourne. Is a lot of our businesses that or a lot of the venues where we were playing just don't exist anymore. Now, for clubs like Hampton, they're still building back up and they're opening when they can. And clubs like Axis and Ales, same thing.
Yep.
But that's a weeknight event. You can't run a whole big tournament or even games day event, whatever you want to call it. If you want to have you want to have that critical mass of people coming, especially from out of state. Well, first of all, no one's coming to Melbourne at the moment. And second of all, having that critical mass involves a certain size of venue. And so it's going to be a little difficult when things do reopen to get the right venues, to get the spaces, especially since everyone else and their dog wants to have an event of some sort, like all the missed birthdays that we've had. Everyone's going to want to celebrate something. And that's important. And I'm not dumping on people for that, obviously.
How dare they enjoy themselves?
Yeah, everyone wants to have fun and see their friends. Heaven forbid. Well, I want to do the same thing. I just do it a slightly different way. I want to push word ollies.
I want to play with my toy soldiers.
Hopefully,
stop booking your birthday parties.
Well, hopefully, the people's birthday parties aren't going to be, bringing in 120 people in a massive social hall. But there's probably a lot of people who will try and push some pretty big things. Hopefully, they go to the pub to do it.
Right. Some of us like to play games in a pub.
It's a great place to play.
That's how Axes and Ales started.
Exactly. There we go. Akhtar Giraffe says Brad and Viv should come to Tassie when you're allowed back in. I'd love to get down to Tasmania. The events that those guys are running down there in the bolt action scene are just out of control.
Hell yeah.
The guys from Dirt put on an amazing event there.
Last weekend's event looked sensational. So many great pictures. I'm looking forward to having Akhtar on soon to talk about that on the show. Because again, we don't have a lot of bolt action going on at the moment in Melbourne and in Sydney. It's always important, though, to remember that bolt action is happening in Perth.
Yeah.
We don't talk about it very often because, unfortunately, I don't know those guys. But
they stole our grand final. We don't talk about them, Brad. No, Perth's actually got a lot of really cool scenes going on at the moment. Their Infinity scene is really big as well, and the guys over there are incredibly positive in the Perth Infinity group. So, you're right. We probably should be mentioning Perth a little bit more in our East Coast podcasts.
Well, it's one of those things. So many of our cities in Australia, I mean, if you're outside of Australia, you may not realize how big we are. We are massive. Yeah. But then you actually look at the population of the country of Australia, and it's about the population of the city that I grew up in, which is Tokyo. And so
I was about to say Tokyo. That's 35 million in the greater Tokyo area if you include Saitama. Like, it's crazy.
It is. And that's where I grew up. And so having all of those people in the space that is about, roughly the same as the continental US, and then spread out, that's pretty wild. And so, in between cities, it is a little bit like Mad Max. Just a little bit, right?
It's a lot like Mad Max on the Nullarbor. Do not get in front of a road train. You will be hit out of the way.
Right? But you know, the difference, or sorry, just the distance, I should say, between Perth and the next biggest closest city is it might as well be in its own country. And so for us, you know, I can drive to Sydney, I can drive to Adelaide, I can drive to Canberra in a day, and I can be there. I mean, we used to drive up to CanCon every year, and you know, you spend the most of the day driving up, you play your games, and then you come back. Sydney's the same thing. It's just a little bit further. Adelaide's closer. It's easier to get to. So we're all kind of in the same ballpark. But the second that you start talking about Brisbane or Perth in particular, you got to fly.
Yeah.
Or you're going to be driving a long time.
You're traveling.
Brisbane is always a 2-day drive minimum.
Yeah.
I've had friends do it in a single day, but those friends are insane and shouldn't have done it.
Even 2 days is a really long haul.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a long drive.
Well, I got to say the car you drive genuinely makes a difference. So I drove down in my wife's '99 Corolla before we almost died last year, thanks to a clogged Monash, and we got crushed. And then the Forester we drove, 5 years old, cruise control. Absolute cakewalk compared to that. Because the other one was a manual, and you're like jamming your foot in the corner to try and work out how can I sit at 110, 115. Sorry, 110. But,
100 depends on where you are.
Speed cameras are worse than the Raiders out there, man. They'll get you.
Yeah.
There's a couple of comments here. Jordan Cole.
Speed cameras are the Raiders. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
Why couldn't you have just taken my firstborn? Fine, I'll pay the fine.
Jordan Cole, you know, he's an old friend of ours, you know, one of my very first customers at the Battle Bunker. He lives in America now. He says, as a Melburnian now living in the States, hearing an American pronounce Melbourne correctly is very refreshing.
Yes, I did notice that. Every time Brad said, I'm like, thank you for not saying Melbourne.
But there's some, well, you've been here for long enough, Brad. Yeah, you know, we've
16 years.
We've acclimatized you. There's some interesting comments here about events, though. You know, being able to get to events. MJ in Oz says, looking forward to CanCon happening again to see everyone again soon.
And
fingers crossed.
Well, here we go. World
Knock
Tweak
on
says,
wood.
got to get to the next CanCon, such a great event. And if we come all the way down, not all the way down, there was another comment here. Where can I see it? This is just the the two polar ends of the world we're living in at the moment. Where did it go? Someone was talking about Historicon in the US.
Historicon's great, man. I've been wanting to get there for years. We have we've had several friends from here fly over for it. Dave of War of the old LRDG fame went over there to play in their bolt action event, and he said it was like a more historical version of CanCon. Here
we go. Scott Beal. Is anybody out there going to Historicon this year? It's in November in Valley Forge. You know, November, for us is just around the corner, but it kind of feels like forever away. CanCon is happening in January, hopefully.
Still up in the air.
This is the thing, right? This is the thing. You know, we can't be sure if these events are still going to be going ahead. It's very difficult to make plans to go to these sorts of things, to enjoy, that atmosphere and the feeling that you get when you're at a big show and a big con. And yet here on the other side of the world, people are just like, let's we're going. I've been seeing things on YouTube and Facebook about events and tournaments happening in the UK for all different sorts of games and stuff, and having that uncertainty here is still really, really difficult.
My wife doesn't know she's going to see her parents before we have our baby in February. Which is kind of because they're in Queensland, so that's a real these are the sorts of things playing on people's minds every day, and I think that's unfortunately just part of the nature of Australia as well, is that not only are we a very geographically spread out country, but our families will often also end up very spread out. My sister's in northern New South Wales, my in-laws are all in Queensland. And it makes it really difficult when these sorts of things happen, that unfortunately, regardless of whether it's the correct thing or not to do, it really makes it a disruptive experience for so many of us. So again, that's a really important message, to just pick up the phone and talk to people at least. And if you are in a state that's not in lockdown, make sure you check our mood before you give us shit for it, because it can be, you know, I'm happy to laugh about it when I'm in the right mood, but if I'm in the wrong mood, I will not talk to you for a week.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there might be one or two people in the chat who've been who've mentioned Viv, who may have sent me stuff in the past and be like, you know, that's not funny this week.
Yeah.
Just quietly.
Yeah,
just
yeah.
not funny.
Yeah, I have had to tell a couple of people, you know, look, it's great. I'm glad you're having a great time on your holiday, or you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But you know, it's super tough here. And you know, it's interesting that Nathaniel Shaw.
we didn't want you to feel left out, Viv.
He says Perth is closer to Singapore and Jakarta than
Yes.
it is to Adelaide.
Yeah.
You know,
It is.
Yes.
that side of the country is so far away that we don't really get that social aspect or that association with what's happening in the west of the country or the far north of Queensland. You know,
Yeah.
it's easy to forget that between Brisbane, which is the capital of Queensland, and all the way up to the far north. You know, it's 3,000 kilometres up to the far north.
It's
Yeah.
it's the same distance as it is from the other, you know, New South Wales and Victoria put together.
Yeah.
So-
So you know, all these guys who are gaming up in Townsville and stuff like that, you know,
Mhm.
you know, all the way up there and then all the way out west, they're just, you know, isolated communities that, you know, really only have the opportunity to interact with themselves.
That's right.
Which again is also why CanCon is such a fantastic thing, because it does bring people from these, you know, quite remote gaming groups into one big space. I remember shout out to the guys from Rockhampton who came down one year for the Infinity tournament at CanCon, and they had not played in anywhere near the level of seriousness that was happening, but they had the best time.
Yeah.
And they had the best attitude, and honestly, it was just so good to see. And that's I think the biggest thing we're missing from those sorts of events.
Yeah, having all the gamers from all around Australia come to one place where it's 10,000 degrees and putting them all in one giant tin shed for a long weekend is awesome.
Fantastic.
Well, Jason Berman in the chat here says, does CanCon coincide with Summer Nats? A thematic wargaming opportunity indeed. Yeah. In that terrible heat. Dave Taylor says there's a good chunk of the time where the rest of the world were pretty jealous of you guys gaming at events over the last 18 months. It's been tough. It's been tough all over the place.
Not in Melbourne.
Not here.
Melbourne. Not here, Dave. We were setting records for how long we could have lockdowns in Australia, and then Sydney decided to have a crack this year, so we had to make sure we went back and beat them again.
Akhtar in the chat here, he's down in Tasmania, part of the Derp crew down there. He says but they don't have a moat around them like we do, like us. So you know, we've been watching Tasmania just constantly. You know, something else happening. Yeah, crazy. Look, Brad, it's been so good having you on. You know, you're very welcome to chill out and hang out with us. But you know, otherwise, you know, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on.
Man, I can hang out a little while longer, but you know, if I don't want to take up anyone's slot or jump in or change your subject,
we can have as many people in this Google Meet as possible. I think before things get unmanageable. But I'm just mindful of the schedule. That you know, let me bring that up. You know, it's the day is really getting away from me. Yes, Mike.
I've got a bit of a question for Brad.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So doing a podcast is, you know, it's you and the screen, and it's not like this where you've got interactivity and stuff.
Right.
And you talked before about hecklers maybe. But you talked about, you know, being really upbeat and stuff, and really people really appreciating that. How do you get positive feedback from us as the audience?
That is a really good question. I don't even get feedback from the other people I'm podcasting with because I turn off the cameras. So I don't have to look at myself because it freaks me out. But also B, I get better sound quality when you turn off cameras and it's just the audio feed through the service that I use. So I typically rely on, and at the end of most of my episodes, I say something along the lines of, if you've liked what we've heard today, please find me on Facebook. Go to the Cast Dice Facebook page, CASTDICE, to the point where a lot of people laugh out loud when I do that now because it's a thing. But I get regular messages from folks, and it's often funny, you know, when things are hardest for me and things aren't great. Murphy's Law, that's typically when those messages drop. And that is something that I've always appreciated, that, that people are listening. And, it could be a simple, hey, I really dug this episode. Thank you. Keep it up. But when you're wondering, why the hell am I getting out of bed to do this? Or why did I, kill myself to get this edited and out on time? That makes all the difference. Yeah.
Yep.
So I know I have a regular group of listeners, and I'm just glad anyone listens, because honestly, it's me and a microphone, and that's what I do. Yeah.
I for one am glad that you do it, Brad. It's a wonderful show, and thanks for everything that you do for our local scene here in Australia. Like you said in your bio, you're prolific and you're known everywhere. Thank you very much for bringing us all the wonderful content that you do.
Thank you, man. I am so honored that you invited me, and I think I may have just kicked out my camera because I'm not used to working video. There we go. I'm not sure if my audio. Whoop! No, I literally kicked it out.
We can
still. Audio is still fine though.
Hey.
I can hear you.
We can still hear you. I'm gonna jump into our next guest, Brad. Thank you so much for joining us.
No worries.
Feel free to hang out here with everybody else. I'm gonna have a quick chat to Jacob. We'll bring him in. I don't have the luxury, Brad, of being able to hold people in a waiting room and introduce them. I've just got to let them loose into the room, and then they can just listen to everyone else rabble on. So thank you once again, Brad, from Cast Dice, one of my favorite podcasts. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, mate.